Mostly Matt here with a quick video about conclave influence, the Tower of Zharr, which council seats are the best, and what order you should try to get them in. There are some really standout seats like Warmonger, gives you plus 15% campaign movement range, kind of like Scarbrand's skill. That's going to be really good if you want to be really aggressive with your main army. And probably one of the ones I'd have an eye out for possibly being the first seat that you take. Then there's stuff like Consul, plus 20 diplomatic relations, income from trade tariffs is not likely to be that impactful. Preceptor grants a random follower or banner ancillary every 3 turns. This seems to be like almost the only way you get ancillaries, that you don't seem to get very many followers at all with the Chaos Dwarves. Bear in mind, it's only one every 3 turns, so it's not like you're getting a huge flood of items. They do have some really good items though, so this is something to keep an eye out for. Maybe not necessarily something that you need straight away though. Income from settlement buildings plus 25%. Income's always great, but I would say that money isn't really the top priority in terms of resources for the Chaos Dwarves. Raw materials is a lot more important. And if you're looking to upgrade your military or recruit any heroes, by the time you're claiming your first seat, armaments is probably going to be a really high priority. As well as banner and follower ancillaries, you can also take this seat to grant you weapon or armor ancillaries every 3 turns, or this one to grant you a magic item or talisman ancillary every 3 turns. These seats that grant you items seem kind of tempting, and they are quite good, especially if you've got a lot of heroes and you want to get as many items as possible. Particularly the followers. Chaos Dwarfs don't really seem to get followers. I'm not sure if there's any other way to get followers apart from through this, and some of their followers are quite powerful. But usually you want to be focusing on your economy growth before you start looking at items. You've got replenishment up here, wins of magic per turn, and a little bit of extra magic power reserve capacity down there. And this one gives you armaments cost minus 10% for all unit capacity upgrades in the Hellforge. Now, this one seems kind of important because you may at this time want to unlock some unit capacity for your Bull Centaurs or your Chaos Dwarf Blunderbusses or whatever the sort of elite core unit is that you're trying to make the focus of your initial army. And Cardinal Demonsmith is not a bad choice for early. If you think about it, that 10% armaments cost reduction is worth roughly the same as Blacksmith if your upgrades are costing you about 250 at the time. But in that early game, you're not going to be spending all of your armaments just on unit upgrades. You also need armaments to build all of your recruitment buildings, all of the buildings that give you hero recruitment. So for me, Blacksmith would edge out Cardinal Demonsmith early, but I would try to make sure I get Cardinal Demonsmith before I start spending really significant amounts of armaments, like thousands, on my unit upgrades. I'd also try to get the unit capacity upgrade cost reductions from the tech tree and also from your Lord's skill tree if he has one for that particular unit before you start dumping hundreds of thousands of armaments into a particular unit upgrade. So for tier 1, I'd say not necessarily 100% in this order, but roughly you'd want to probably go for armaments first, materials, then Warmonger, or Cardinal Demonsmith. Those 4 I feel like are sort of the most essential. You kind of want to come back and get everything later. Those are the kind of 4 that I would try to go for first. Once all 4 seats in 2 different districts have been claimed, either by yourself or in combination with the other Chaos Dwarf Lords, then you can move up and start claiming tier 2 seats. There's a slight increase in maximum convoy capacity and Lord recruit rank for your convoy overseers. I don't think you need that. Expounder General gives you +1 influence point per turn for your factory settlement buildings. So each factory settlement that you have, you're going to get +1 per turn. If you're struggling for influence by the time you get to this point, then this might be a good option. But assuming that you're able to get enough labor and you've got enough regions, you can just create conclave influence out of labor every turn at quite a high rate. So if you've got the labor, this is not as important. Construction time -1 for all buildings, minimum of 1 turn. This is huge because you're quite often using labor to rush construction, and it costs 100 labor to rush construction for each turn of the construction time. So this is essentially saving you 100 labor off of every construction rush. Unit capacity +1 every 4 turns for randomly chosen melee or missile infantry. This one, and also Grand Reaper, gives you +1 every 4 turns for randomly chosen Bull Centaur, Kadai, or Flying Monster unit. Both of these sort of seem good, but at the time when you're getting into this area, which is sort of around the mid game, you're hopefully going to have pretty decent armament production. So you're going to be spending, hundreds per turn perhaps on these capacity upgrades already, and this one extra capacity isn't necessarily even on the particular unit that you're trying to upgrade. I think where these would actually be good is extremely late game. If you've increased capacity hugely to the point where it's costing you thousands for each upgrade, then you've got a selection of army abilities. You've got the Dreadquake battery, same as your Dreadquake mortar. That's really powerful, single use. The Wrath of Zharr, this is quite good as well. It's kind of like the Zufbar 42 pounders, except you get 2 uses per battle. The Hierophant, this allows you to summon a unit of Kadai Fireborn. Having a free summon every battle is really powerful, especially if you've got a ranged heavy army and you just kind of need some extra suicide tanks. Demagogue is a lord ability, so each of your lords gains essentially an extra bound spell with 2 uses. I haven't actually used it, but seems to have like low range. I'm not sure if that'd be as good as the other 3 options. I think tier 2 is a bit more open as to what you choose depending on the situation that your campaign is in. If you're low on labor, then the construction time is going to be good. If you're low on influence, then conclave influence is going to be good. I'd definitely skip trafficker. I'd probably keep Grand Reaper and conscriptor until late game, and I'd probably spend points in these army abilities because these 3 especially are all going to be quite impactful, and this is going to be on every single army. If you have a couple of lords just mining a province to deal with rebels or whatever, these army abilities are multiplied by the number of lords that you've got. Note the district bonus for industry in tier 2 is +1 convoys, so you can have 2 convoys going at once. Military district gives you +2 global recruitment capacity. Once you've completed 2 of the districts in tier 2, then you can move up and start claiming stuff in tier 3. I think by the time you've got access to tier 3, you probably know what you need, and where your particular campaign is going to dictate more what you want. If you get to tier 3 by the sort of mid game, then you're probably going to have a lot of armament production, a lot of material production. This extra workload requirement reduction for raw materials and raw materials consumed by buildings reduction probably isn't really going to be all that impactful, assuming that you're doing really well economically by this stage. And this construction cost reduction for each industry seat you've got, so just say you had like every single seat here, that's 4, 7, 9, so that's 18% cost reduction on your buildings. This is really good, and you can stack that with other construction cost reduction as well. These 2, I think, are the kind of things where if your economy is doing really well in the mid game and you're sort of starting to steamroll, or you're already steamrolling, these things are both going to help you steamroll faster essentially. But if you were kind of had a problem in that area, these aren't really going to solve it. If you were sort of selling your labor to get more conclave influence in order to sort of rush to tier 3, these aren't going to sort of help you as much in the early game. You could probably sell that labor to get money, or use that labor to rush more construction that would help you more on the strategy map than these seats would help you economically. Infinitus gives you -1% upkeep for each military seat claimed in the Tower of Zharr. So if you've got all of these 9 seats claimed, then that's pretty huge. Field Marshal spawns a temporary army of hobgoblins when sacking enemy settlements. I'm not exactly sure what the best application of this skill is, but it seems like there could be some exploit potential there. Black Artificer is a powerful bombardment ability. I haven't actually used this one, but as I mentioned in tier 2, I think army abilities in general are quite good. They multiply essentially by the number of armies that you have. So early game, when you've only got 1 army, having that extra ability is really powerful. Late game, when you've got 20 armies, having 20 of them is really powerful. Mutator gives +3 Winds of Magic capacity for each sorcery seat claimed in the Tower of Zharr. So if you've got the full complement, that's +27 Winds of Magic reserve for every army. Like the army abilities, this is multiplying by how much military that you have. In terms of the completion bonuses, +3 control to all provinces. Again, how valuable this is kind of depends on how you're doing. If you're struggling to maintain your labor force, then higher control is going to make it easier for you to reduce your slave reduction. But if you've got basically an unlimited supply of incoming labor, then this is not really going to be that important. Global recruitment duration is really good in the late game when you're trying to manage a large empire with multiple fronts. Being able to recruit the units that you need wherever you need them. Winds of Magic cost reduction for all spells is great. There's other Winds of Magic reduction that you can get from the tech tree and from skill lines as well. Once you complete 2 districts in tier 3, you unlock tier 4, which is the Confederation tier. You can confederate both of the other legendary lords or the Masters of the Conclave, the brown chaos dwarfs that own Zharr Nagrund. Bear in mind, the other Chaos Dwarf factions can steal seats from you. So if you take Excise Collector, then one of the other Chaos Dwarfs can then take that seat from you. Every time a seat gets stolen, the price to steal it goes up. So you can see this one, Thaumaturge, was stolen by the Warhost of Zharr. So now if I want to steal it again, the price is now 150. Whereas to steal one of these ones that's only been taken once, it's only 112. If one of your seats gets stolen, it's up to you whether you want to steal it back, or you might want to just let them keep it and use your points to fill in one of the other slots so that you can get the district completion bonus and move on, and potentially move on to the next tier more quickly if that gets you 2 districts completed. But especially in the early game, if you've kind of got a strategy and part of that is having Blacksmith early or Machinator or Warmonger early, I'd probably consider stealing them back. At least when you steal it back, the price will then go up, so it's more expensive and harder for them to steal it from you again. At this stage, I've only had access to the game for a few days, but I hope these initial thoughts maybe help you with your game. Check the video at the end for how to get infinite labor for your Chaos Dwarfs.